back to the Pro Series Podcast. This is episode 151, and today's guest is Dan Capello. Dan is a personal transformation expert, leadership expert. He's an author. We talk all about his book, How to Become a Better Leader and How to Make Your Business Even Better with Better Leadership. But before we get into this episode, please like, subscribe, and review this podcast on wherever you listen to podcasts. And now I hope you enjoy episode 151 with Dan Capello. Dan, thank you so much for hopping on the Pro Series Podcast today. Can't wait to get your side of the business and what you're doing and how you have helped out so many other entrepreneurs, chefs, and other people around the world. So excited to have you on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, I always like to start out on how we kind of met, and we met through Olivia, and she sent me over your bio, and the first thing I saw in your bio was burnout. That word like stuck out to me, and I feel like, especially over COVID, a lot of people were working from home. They didn't have that work-life balance. I felt like, you're always constantly in front of your computer, and the burnout was real. So that was the main reason I'm like, wow, that's going to be a great topic to talk about, and I think everybody kind of relates to that. But I want to start out and kind of get into your career and how you started. You're a chef. Is that what you started out of high school?
No, actually, I did. I went to the Air Force. I was actually a medic at the Air Force. And then I actually got out into college, and I was pre-med, and I took like 5 years, but I kept dropping anything with the reading in it because I'm dyslexic. And
Okay.
so, I mean, I had all my advanced, my genetics, my biochem 1, 2, 3, all those organic, all the chemistries, maths, but I kept dropping the Englishes and histories. And finally I just got to the point where it's just like, I want to cook. And my parents told me, you can't make money cooking. What are you, crazy? And I'm like, yeah, pretty much. So, yeah, that's how I ended up cooking.
Very interesting. So it wasn't like an interest to you during high school to cook, or was it just kind of like a turning point in college? You're like figuring out what you wanted to do, and that was the first thing that came to you.
No, well, when I was a kid, I had trauma issues, and one of my things was that I like to read a lot. I wasn't reading; I was looking at the pictures. And my mom bought the I actually have them right here. It's the Grand Diplomat Cooking Course. It's like a 20 different books, and it's like this whole encyclopedia of French cooking. And I saw all these chefs, and this was about 9, 10, 11 years old. And that always just kind of stuck with me. It's like, wow, that's really cool. They had all their hats, and they made all this food, and it was just really cool. The sauces and the garnishes, and seeing that classical cuisine back then. And then my mom cooked a lot. After she bought those books, she actually, like, we went to Houston, and we went to the spice shop, and she bought all these exotic spices. Were exotic back then to us, star anise, clove, nutmeg, lemongrass, all these different things, and curries and all this. And she started using those. So that was kind of like the beginning of the cooking. Is we came from a larger family, and it was a refinery family. So dad worked all the time. We're 6 kids. And so mom cooked everything because we couldn't afford to go out all the time, but she could cook a lot. And we were on the Gulf Coast, and we could take the seafood from there, and mom would cook it. We'd make gumbo and all this other stuff, but she always was cooking, and we were always helping and cleaning. So kind of fell right into it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how a lot of my guests that come on the podcast are in their second or third career, and how the career that they're in now is their passion career. It's something that they were meant to do. Is that what you feel like being a chef is something that you were meant to do?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, it's like you find a job, and you're like, you laugh because they pay you money, and they pay you a lot of money to do it. And I'm cooking. It's like, this is what I used to do. I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's serious when you start getting the business aspect into it. And, that's when you start, a lot of the chefs will get in there, and you'll be like, you're cooking all the time, and then you're not cooking, because as you move up the ranks, I always tell them, I said, when you're cooking, you use 2 hands. When you start to become a sous chef, you use 1 hand, and then you're using the other hand to manage people. And then as you get to the executive chef, you don't cook anymore, and you're using your hands to manage people. And so you lose that touch with the actual physical cooking. And I did competitions and was working on certification, so I cooked a lot for that. But the day-to-day cooking, you couldn't do that because you don't have time to do that. And a lot of leaders, that's a big thing, is you have to separate yourself you have to, that 80% of what you used to do, you have to turn it over to somebody else. You can do that 20% that really matters. That's going to move the needle and what they
For
hired you for.
Oh yeah. Let's get into like how you kind of discovered that you could help others. Was there a breaking point or something that you went through in your life that kind of got to realization that you could help other people or other people are like you that have these same issues?
Yes. So when went to my best friend's wedding. It was in Philadelphia,
Okay.
and I saw the picture later, and it mortified me because I was 300 pounds, and I'm like, who is that? I didn't recognize myself because all the stress and all the everything had worked up to that, and that was 2018 in the
Okay.
summer, and I was like, man, I got to do something about that, and that's when I decided I was going to run like January 1st. I'm going to run a Spartan race. It was after I read
Wow.
David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. So I signed up for the race, and I actually lost 70 pounds and ran my first Spartan race in October of 2019.
For
And
you.
that's when COVID hit. But a lot of people will lose a lot of weight and they'll go, oh, good, I'm fixed, I'm done and all that. But all that did was open the can of the mental issues and mental trauma,
Mm.
um, and sexual trauma that I had when I was a child that I had blocked out. And it created a lot of the patterns where it created my coping mechanisms at a very early age.
Mm-hmm.
So I could start backtracking. I call it going back to your ground zero, figuring out where the point where the divergent off the trail you were on, where you ended up taking off into a trail you didn't want to. It wasn't your choice. You were giving this, unwillingly.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what ended up with the bullying, my speech impediment. Nobody in my family ever had a speech impediment, but right about 6 years old, all of a sudden I developed a speech impediment, and it took like 3 years to get over. And to go back and look at that and see, the food addictions, the alcohol addiction, the drug, all this things working up to it, it was all from one event. And if we can find that one event, it's like, wow, if you can figure out, you were never good enough, or,
Mm.
and people, your parents told you were never good enough, or you were very traumatic by an event that happened, a loved one real close died at that perfect age where it just kind of like it took the life out of your cells, or you created a disaster yourself, and all these little events create who we are as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times that'll make us very successful because you were never good enough, so now you have to prove to the world that you're the best. But the problem is you get to a certain point, and the skills that got you there are not the skills that's going to get you to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
That's only one level, and a lot of people get stuck there. And I was like, man, if you could get past that. But it has to go with finding your clarity and being self-aware and actually accepting and being honest about who you are. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
all suck, and I suck a lot, but it's like to figure out why, then you can do something about it. Because if you don't figure out why, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, it's nuts how much these little things that happen in our lives. Some are little, some are huge, but sometimes when you're looking back on your life and you're trying to figure out why you're in a situation you are now currently, and you look back, you can't see it, but you go get some help from a therapist or whoever you're getting help from, and they unbury something that you didn't even realize was the issue of why you are today. It's one of those things that you don't realize it until you actually go and get help and get fixed. But these things just bury up and kind of just domino effect on you, and it takes you out when you're later on in life, and it's insane what it does to you mentally, in your professional career, and personal career.
Right. I mean, like, because we work at jobs and stuff, and if we have a bad moment at work, or if we ended up like when I went through all that, I went into a deep depression and started drinking more. But it was like it took a while. I had to like look at Jung, and I went through all of that, Maslow's theories, the attachment theory, the shadows, all this
Mm.
stuff, and went through. And finally, that's where I was like, okay, I can do this, this, and this will, it gives you clarity on what you can do.
Hmm.
And that is really where we all can find our help, is when we figure out a system to where we can plug ourselves into that system and then figure it out. Because when I talk to some people, a lot of the people I talk to, when I mentioned about the sexual trauma, like, wow, you're so open and vulnerable. It's like, but it's not about me anymore. It's about you. It's about that person. Because a lot of those people I talked to them months later, and they were like, because what you said, it's like I was able to address my sexual trauma. And there was quite a few people. One of them was a very famous soccer star, and she was able to do that. Now she is leading hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people, the soccer players, through college. I mean, it's amazing the things that happen when you see someone else that admit it and own it, that gives them the power to do that. And once they get that power, then they can start doing something, and then they start sharing that message. And because it's not like it's a one-off. We're all traumatized by something, every single person.
Oh yeah.
And that's, you got to own it.
This is a topic that I wish and hope for the future that people learn in school growing up, because anything, any opinion based anything, politics, whatever you want to say, any opinion that you have on anything is drilled back to, it stems back to something in your life. There's a reason why they're thinking that way. And we get so kind of, we want to jump down someone's throat because they don't think the same way as you. But maybe they think that way because of a trauma in their life or something that they went through in their life. And that's kind of the beauty about being human. Everybody has a different life. Imagine if we all were the same exact thing. It would be a very, very, very boring world to live in. And that's the beauty about being a human, but also being able to learn and realize that other people are making decisions based off of their beliefs and what they encountered throughout their whole entire life is huge.
Right. Yeah, I've talked to many general managers of billion-dollar corporations and CEOs, and most of them have the company actually hired a specialist with them, whether it was a therapist or whatever. So they went through all the stuff that I talk about and I learned in the books. The company paid for them to do it, because it's like, if the company realized, if we can help this person, this leader, get over themselves and start leading with a more personable heart, and
Hmm.
actually lead instead of with their own ego, they can lead with empathy, then their company is like, will exponentially grow. That's that 10x factor until you get to that level of leader. And that's all of us. We're all capable of it, but we have to get over all these other hurdles. And a lot of us, like me, I never would have gone to therapy until after I went through all this. And then I talked to somebody and actually did some therapy, and it was amazing. It was like night and day. It's like a switch. And it
Yeah.
was like, wow. And people don't realize that that's key. A lot of that holds us back. It's because we won't admit it.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, we all know someone that is very frugal or maybe very tight with money, and there's a reason why they're tight with money. And instead of making fun of them, is just kind of stepping back and realizing, hey, maybe they did go through something. And I think that's a lot of even going back into schooling, like why people are bullied. And there's things that people can't change, but maybe they were implemented in their lives. Their parents drilled in them or grandparents. Not I had another episode I talked about this, how parents don't, they're doing the best they can. There's no handbook. And you can't look back and saying it's a bad job or anything, but it's something that, it goes with you for the rest of your life, how you learn stuff from them, the beliefs that they kind of rub off of them onto you. So it's not their fault, but it's when you're a young kid, your brain is truly a sponge, and it's just taking in all of this stuff to kind of take you through life. And if you don't work on those and chisel away at some of those to make yourself the person that you want to be, you're going to be in the same spot for years.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's where a lot of us, we ended up in that one spot.
Mm.
And, I guess it happened. I mean, even in Ben Franklin's day, he said most people die at 25 and we bury them at 70. It's because they get to a point where they can't get past themselves, and they can't learn anymore, because they think either A, they think they know it all, or B, they think they're unteachable. And
Mm.
you get to either one of those levels, then you stop growing as a person. Then it's like you learned how to let's say build a house. Then that's all you're going to do the rest of your life is build that one house or do the electrical. And you can't. And we're all built for something more than a manual task. We're all built for helping each other. We all have a purpose, and your purpose is what you have to help others.
Yeah.
And that's from the purpose factor. Gab and Brian Boucher wrote that. But also, fulfillment comes from using your purpose to help others. And that is where we don't get our fulfillment, is because we don't use our gift. We're all individual. We, like you talked about earlier, we all have a gift. And our gift is that we are an example, a survivor. And it's like, here, guys, I went to the top of this mountain and I came back down to get you so we can all go up the mountain. And then I'm going to keep bringing people up the mountain. And everybody will realize once they get to the top of the mountain, guess what? There's another mountain.
Yeah.
And that's where people stop, is they won't go up the mountain because they don't know how to get up there, or they're scared. Self-doubt.
Oh, self-doubt is huge.
Yeah.
So what part of this journey that you went through personally kind of got you to the point where, hey, I want to help someone else?
Well, actually, when I was like, okay, well, I need to write this down. I need to start. So I started journaling and being dyslexic. And I was like, I'm going to write a book. And it's like, who does that? It's like, well, I'm going to do it someday. So I ended up writing a book, and it's about 6 stops. Really, it's on a journey. It's called Deliberate Evolution. It's
Hmm.
about evolving into the next level of you. And then once you evolve into that level, then you go back to square one and evolve again. And, the very first thing it's like we all have to do is get clarity. And when I found the clarity of what I could do and who I was and what my problems were, because problems are only problems until you find out that they are there and you can find a solution for them, or you can adapt to them, or you take those problems. What do they say? You take your mess and you turn it into a message. Well, that's what I did. I took my mess and I figured out how to get out of my mess. Well, now that's my message, is I'm here to help you get through your self-doubt, your lack of action into a lot of the things. Because we get into a job, and then sometimes we're there and we're like, we just go through the motions, or we drive home and we don't even realize, like, how was your day? It's like, well, I don't really remember. It's because you went through your day and you weren't present. And to be unpresent in life, and then you come home and you're not present here and you're not present there, and you have your distractions, and we're all distracted, and we drink, we go out, we watch football, we go, all this other stuff, and we don't see the problem, which is looking us in the mirror.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, that's what I want to do, is help people address themselves so they can go to their next level.
Yeah. It's an awesome thing to hear that you're turning your mess into a message instead of your mess into the rearview mirror and just part of your story and not helping anybody else. I think there's a lot of people out there that they go through a lot, they've learned a lot, but they don't want to share any of the stuff they learned because they see that as a weakness, or they're trying to help other people out get to where they are, and they think that is a competition or something. And it's awesome to see that people want to help others from mistakes or maybe situations that they've been through in life.
Yeah, I mean, it's our mess is it's hard to get out of, and
Hmm.
it's nice to have a road. And this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I mean,
Oh, I
writing a
bet.
book was almost impossible, but I got it done. And then when I finally finished it, the 18th, 19th, 20th edit, I was like, wow, this is actually something somebody can use, because it's actually has like worksheets and stuff in it. So that point, and then now it's like I have to be vulnerable in front of a bunch of people. It's like I admit my faults, and for you to walk out in front of people and tell people that, I mean, that's one of the biggest fears, is we go out and it's like, but what if they find out? It's like, okay, well, let's get that out of the way and just tell them. Just
Hmm.
tell them what happened. That way there's nothing to find out. You're not hiding anything. You can't hold anything against me, because
Hmm.
I'm like, yeah, I was an asshole. Yeah, I've been this. Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I haven't been a nice person. But now I can look back and see why.
Mm.
Because the bully, there's a reason he's a bully. He's probably bullied at home. And the narcissist, there was something happened in their life that they became a narcissist, not on purpose. It just, something happened.
Hmm.
And even Jeffrey Dahmer, something happened. All these people, Al Capone, everything that they always say, these are very bad people, but they don't look at the extenuating circumstances that created this person, that created the monster.
Yeah.
And nobody stood in there and said, stood in the gap and said, hey man, this is something's wrong. You know, you need to look at this, this, and this. And that's where, if you point that out to people, they can find, I mean, I use some really extreme examples, and I don't
But
like
no, that makes
point to anything great in them,
yeah.
but
But that makes sense though. It gives you an example that everybody knows and understands and can put, what you're talking to kind of to work, which is a nice example to have.
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're held accountable for what we've done.
Yeah.
That's a
100%.
given, but we can always be better. We can
Hmm.
always be better tomorrow. And if you're just 1% better, I think it was James Clear. He said, if you're 1% better every day, 30 by the end of the year, you're 37% better than you were the year before. Can you
Hmm.
imagine being 1/3 better than you are now every
Yeah.
single year?
Yeah. Seriously. There's a quote that I posted, I think it was a couple months ago, and it was about how I never want to be the same person I was a year ago. Like being the same person I am right now, 1 year from now, is the scariest thing. Like, why would you ever, even if you love your life right now, you're in a great spot, um, it's still being stagnant in that same situation gets boring and you're not bettering yourself. It's not good for your mental health to be stagnant and kind of being consistent in life like that.
Yeah. No, I'm reading a book right now, and it's Dan Sullivan.
Mm.
What was it? I forgot the name of it. Ben Hardy wrote it for him. 10x is easier than 2x. And he
Okay.
talks about the iterations of yourself, to where you get to a point and you get 80% of what you're doing that you don't want to be doing, and you hire, it's not how you're going to do it, it's who you're going to get to do it.
Mm.
Not to dump it on, but who can do this better than you, that would enjoy doing this, that you hate. And then the 20% is what you concentrate. He goes, every year I reiterate into, or I iterate into that next person of the 20%. 80% I find someone else to do, and I only concentrate on 20% every single year. And he goes, I don't, why would I retire? He goes, I'm having fun with what I'm doing, because I'm constantly making what I do more specific and more enjoyable, because
Hmm.
I'm only, every year I whittle down just a little bit more to what I really love to do. And if we did that in our lives, it's like you get to the point to where you're only, it's like, why would you retire? You can have time for your vacations, because you actually do less work and you get more impact. And that's where we
Mm.
need to get is, we always think, if I want to make more money, I need to work harder. No, you need to work smarter. But that's really on concentrating on what what are the things I need to be doing and what are the things I don't need to be doing. And when you measure those together, your success is just going to, what your output's going to be is 10x. And if you can 10x yourself, it's not every year you 10x yourself. It's maybe, everybody's like, oh, well, what if you can make $1,000,000? Let's say, like as a chef, I made, multiple $100,000. And it's like, but that's it. You're limited. You're capped really on what you're doing. It's like, well, what if you could 10x that? And you're like, well, I can't 10x that. I didn't say how long you had to do, or I couldn't do that in 2 years. And that's from the book. And he talks about, it's not, I didn't give you a time frame. He goes, 10x can be 20 years. But what if you 10x yourself, your income? He goes, your income, it's like, is impacted on your specialty and your niches. And once you can narrow it down, the more you narrow it down, the better you are at it, the better you are at this, the closer you are to the best in the world, is the more money you're going to make by doing less work, because you're not mowing, it's theoretical, but you're not mowing the grass, you're not washing the dishes, you're not cooking the meals, you're concentrating on this. And
Yeah.
that's where a lot of us, if we can isolate it and have the courage, because to be able to stop doing what's working, like for me to get away from being a chef and making that, and have that addiction to the income that we all have, the salary or addiction, is to be okay, I'm going to have to give this away so that I can get this, and it's going to lead to there, but there's no guarantee.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of, like, self-doubt will keep you right here. Not having, taking action will keep you right here. But really, it's to go there, you're going to have to, you have to get rid of this to go there.
Yeah.
And, that's where I'm at. And that's what I'm helping other people do. It's like, you're going to have to, you got to go down before you can go up.
Yeah. Kind of want to go back to your book. You said something about there's workbook pages in there. So you're literally letting the listener kind of work on themselves while they read.
Yes, in every
That's
chapter. So
awesome.
there's the 6 stops when you go through there, and every chapter at the end of it, there is a um, thoughts where you can actually it's a thought provoking exercise, and then
Okay.
there's questions at the end.
Hmm. That's
So
pretty cool.
like when I wrote the book, I took each stop and I made a question map for each one, which basically you're asking everything you need to ask about that subject. And I actually used that question map and made those questions at the very end. So what I used created to write the book, I actually have it at the very end of each chapter. And then there's the meditative part where you go through, it's an exercise. And it's really simple ones. Like one of them's to figure out your um, values. It's like it takes you take a sheet of paper and you write your values, and it's just not like willy nilly. Write 5 things. It's like your health, your wealth. There's different categories, and you write 5 or 6 things in each one, and then you take those and you start whittling them down till you got 10, and then you number them from 1 to 10. You do that, and then you're going to take the top three, and that is your values. That's your core values, and they're going to be prioritized because you numbered them.
Yeah.
And then when that's the first chapter on the exercise, and when you can do that, it's you get a clear vision of who you are and what you want in life, and then you can figure out how you can get there. It's like if you take it's toward the end of the book, I talk about making decisions. So if you make one decision 52 times once a week for a year, and you had 2 different decisions and you weren't quite clear on your values, there at the end of the year, there's 4 trillion different outcomes that you can have just for making 52 decisions, because they're exponential. So just imagine that 4 trillion different outcomes. And unless you had your very first one, which is your clarity, which is your reason, it's your values. If you had that, and what if you made that only had one choice, and this only had one choice? Every week you only had one choice. Then at the end of the year, maybe you only had 10 because you mixed a little bit here or whatever, or maybe you only had one outcome.
Hmm.
And that's where the deliberate evolution came from.
Very interesting. Well, Dan, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come on to the podcast. I loved our conversation here, and I want to end with where people could follow you on social media, LinkedIn, and then also where people could buy your book.
All right. I'm at Dan Capello on LinkedIn. My website is dancapello.com. And my book is on Amazon, and I can send you a link,
That'd
but
be
it's available
perfect.
on Amazon. It's Deliberate Evolution, 6 stops every leader must make to live a life of success. I just happen to have the copy of the book. It's
Perfect.
my Arthur copy.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, send me over the links and your usernames and everything. I'll put that in the description to the podcast and on social media. But thank you again so much for hopping on the podcast today.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. It was awesome. I appreciate what you're doing.
Oh, no problem at all.
Thank you.